Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at Storm Collectibles Street Fighter 2 Ultra Street Fighter 2 Guile figure, which is the SDCC exclusive version in the blue rather than the green. I will be getting the green eventually, but I wanted to get the SDCC versions while they were at SDCC. So that's what I have here, and there's a lot to talk about with this thing. It's a really good figure in a lot of ways, and then we do have a few issues which we need to talk about, but overall it's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about 7.5 inches, which makes him pretty close to 19.5 centimeters, and there is our first problem. These guys were originally intended, the Street Fighter line originally intended to be 1/12 scale. Let's see if it still says that anywhere on the package, because that's kind of an important thing to consider. Are they still technically 1/12 scale? I don't see that it says that anywhere anymore. So maybe we can't use that as a criteria anymore. I don't see it on the packaging, but it started off that way. Here is the original Ryu from their own line, which was advertised as 1/12 scale. He is totally out of scale with this guy. Definitely too short. And yes, Guile is supposed to be taller than Ryu, but I don't think by that much. Either way, it's not that bad until you consider the fact that Ryu was already out of scale, because this is a Marvel Legends figure that is at 1/12 scale, and it, in fact, is actually too tall for 1/12 scale. He's having trouble standing up right now. Good old Hasbro. Good old Hasbro. Come on. So there you go. So this guy is already technically slightly big for 1/12 scale. Then we go to their original Ryu, which was way too big, because he should be shorter than Cyclops, I believe. And then we move on to this guy, which is even bigger. Although that's probably not as far off as I originally said. That's probably pretty close. But then there's more. This is our new version of Ryu, which is even bigger still, which will be repainted as the regular Ryu. So that's even bigger, and that's closer. Why does he look like his one leg is longer than the other? Probably from how I had him posed. So that's probably a little closer, although Ryu even looks kind of big there. I'd have to check the height measurements for those guys. So my point is, scaling is just out the window at this point. It's not even close. Here's one last thing I want to compare. This is the Soda Toys Guile, which is just a phenomenal figure from so long ago and still making Hasbro look stupid. But that scaling makes more sense. That's 1/12 scale. I don't know if that's an issue for you guys or not, the new scaling for the Storm figures. They're huge. They are bigger than 7-inch scale figures now, if Guile's 7.5 inches. That's a pretty big guy right there. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would rather everything be in scale, at least within the Storm line, but that seems to be bouncing all over the place as well, so I just don't know what to do with it anymore. I still like the figures individually, but we're losing a lot more of that cross-compatibility that we were hoping for originally, so bear that in mind. And now that we've spent 3 minutes talking about scale, let's move on. Aesthetics-wise, everything's nice and matte finished on this guy. It looks good in that regard. They got the flag placed where it belongs. It originally was on the bicep instead. You can see though, hopefully you can see, that the flag itself is not actually the US flag. It's a checkerboard pattern, which you're not going to notice at any distance, and maybe that's why they did it, but it is worth mentioning. They did a nice job painting the blue on top of the skin tone here. It's nice clean lines for the most part, so that's good. The camouflage on the pants, definitely not as good as it could be. It's nowhere near as bad as some instances we've seen recently on other figure lines, but it's not the best camouflage I've ever seen. It looks a lot like squiggly lines, but it's not terrible. It's not going to catch your eye as being terrible, so that's okay. Belt is painted nicely, hair is painted nicely, face is painted nicely, boots are pretty clean. That's all good. Overall proportions, I think, are pretty good on this guy. It definitely has the Storm Collectibles bulky build, but that's alright. It's not too bad, I don't think. It's closer in line with Street Fighter 4, I'd say, than anything else. I feel like the shoulders are probably just a little bit too wide. If they were sucked in just a little bit, it'd probably look really nice. But it still looks really nice on its own, so that's good. And then the other thing we'll get to when we get to the articulation. So aesthetics-wise, I'm going to give this guy, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Scale is definitely weird, though, so be aware of that. All right, moving on to the accessories. We have a ton of accessories. We have his neutral face that comes on him in the package. We have one face where he's gritting his teeth. We have one face where he's yelling, and then we have one face where he's knocked out. And they all are done pretty well. I will say for the faces though, as far as Guile goes, he's always had a little bit of a Cro-Magnon look because of the lack of eyebrows and the big eyebrow bone and all that. This is not a terrible rendition of him. However, I do personally skew much more towards the more normal human look that you see with like this guy. Let's focus on this. I think that's a better look for Guile. It matches more of his in-game art, I would say, but this is not a terrible look for Guile. I think it's okay, but it is something worth mentioning. I remember I talked about that in one of the reveal videos, how his face seemed a little bit off. It does, but it's not terrible. It's fine. It's okay. It's probably more of a personal preference thing. Okay, back to the accessories. So we have a bunch of different hands. We have 2 fist hands, 2 karate chop hands, 2 gripping hands for his comb, and then 2 kind of grapply hands. So that's kind of nice. We do have his comb. We have sonic boom things that go on his hands for like when he's getting ready to do the sonic boom, or as he's like, I guess, initiating it. Those are done in a nice translucent clear with yellow shading. Then we have an actual sonic boom, which I really like this accessory. They nailed it. That's really nice. And then we do also have a flash kick accessory, which looks pretty good. I'm not sure about the amount of green on there. It's kind of questionable, but either way, it's still pretty cool that we got that. And we have a little stand to hold up his sonic boom and his flash kick. If you want to pose him in a flash kick, though, you're going to have to provide your own stand. Storm does sell some, which do work nicely, but they are still basically the Street Fighter ones, so they're fairly bulky. But you do not get one in the package, so be aware of that. So accessory-wise, everything you need, everything you could want except for a stand, so I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Very nice accessories. You could also count his dog tags and necklace if you wanted to. Those are pretty good, though the dog tags probably could use a little bit of work. If you want to go back 10 years or more and look at those dog tags and necklace are actually better probably than the new ones, but they're definitely good enough. All right, moving on to the articulation. The head is on a ball peg, which goes all the way down into the torso, so it's essentially a double ball peg. You can lean the whole thing side to side, which is pretty cool. And then of course the head can move on that top joint. So you can pose the head pretty well. I think it's one of their better examples of their neck joint. So I like that. Very good. And he does have some neck to him also. He's not completely devoid of having a neck like some of the other figures. For the shoulders, we have a ball peg that connects the arm to the body. And so this is just a floating piece, and you can butterfly that forward. It does squish the pec a little bit, but that actually works out okay. So you can bring his arms pretty far forward in the butterfly sense, and that's not bad. It's a little finicky because these are floating pieces, and this is essentially a floating piece as well, but it does work. You can bring his arms back as well, though you start to get some serious gapping if you're not really careful. But it can be done, so you can bring his arms back. Looks a little bit weird, but you can do it. Then you can raise them up and down on that as well, and you still have this joint. So you can raise the arms up better than horizontal, so that's fine. You do have full rotation. It's not the bad kind of squeaky, so that's good. Your bicep swivel is really stiff, but it is there. Double jointed elbow, not the best. Only a little bit better than 90 degrees. That's kind of a bummer. We do have a ball hinge wrist, which is their standard ball hinge wrist. I don't have any issues swapping the hands out. They pop out very easily. We have a double ball peg for the torso, which leans really far forward, although you end up with this. So that's not really good. There are ways to avoid that, I believe, but that's pretty terrible. It's good if you're not looking from the back, but otherwise that's not good. Going back, we can do the same thing. Let's see how it looks though. Yeah, so there's definitely a little bit fine tuning that could go on there. That's not great. You can still get decent range and still hide it, but you're definitely going to lose some. Now this is one other issue I wanted to mention for the aesthetic. The way they sculpted his abdomen, I don't know what the heck is going on there. I think maybe this was originally supposed to be down farther so that the belt was up there, but right now we just have like almost like a beer belly, which you don't notice if you're going to pose him probably, but it's still there technically a little bit. So that's definitely something to mention. You do get full rotation, of course. This one is on a single ball peg down here, and you get decent range out of that, so that's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that beer belly thing. Also, be careful with this part. So it's definitely a finicky torso. Probably needed a little bit more refinement in the R&D stage before production. Kind of strange. If you don't pose him, you're going to definitely have a beer belly. And then if you do pose him, you're going to have some gapping. So that's definitely a tricky torso to deal with. Not my favorite thing in the world. Crotch piece is a floaty crotch piece. The legs go all the way forward, no problem. They go back pretty far, but you have a squishy butt issue. Going out to the side would be fine, except, wow, this one doesn't want to move. The pockets get stuck on the hip right here, so you can't bring the leg out to the side very far, and I can't get this one to go very far at all. I don't know what's going on there. That's a problem. Very squeaky. I don't think it's going to be a problem on those joints, but it could be, so be careful. Thigh swivel is there. It's minimal, but it's there. Double jointed knee. Very smooth knee. I like that. But a little bit better than 90. That's okay. We do have a boot swivel right here. And then for the ankle itself, the boot can go all the way back, which is really nice. How far forward can it go? It can't. It can't go very far forward, so that's definitely a bummer. Then you get a toe hinge, which is decent. Not great. And then the last bit is an ankle rocker, which is at a very steep angle, but you can rotate the boot a little bit, so it's more usable than it looks. So that's pretty good. So all in all, the articulation definitely suffers from a few issues. You're going to be able to do a lot with the arms and probably get away with it. But the hips are definitely a problem. The torso is definitely a problem. Ankles don't have that forward range we would want. So it's definitely like half awesome and half not good. So I don't know how to rate it. I guess I'll give it a 6 for the articulation. Like half of it would be a 7 or 8, then half of it would be a 5 or a 4. So 6 to 7, I guess, for the articulation. For some poses, it'll be great. For others, it's definitely going to be a problem. So I guess be aware of that. And now it's time for the final verdict on this figure. I would love to be able to give it a much higher rating overall because I really like Guile. And I really like a lot of what they did here. But 90-degree elbows, acceptable but not great. Giant gappy torso, great for range, lots of gaps. Hips are very minimal, ankles relatively minimal. I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff here, but probably enough bad stuff to pull it back down. So I'm going to give the overall verdict on this figure a generous 7. Well, no, it has a lot of accessories and an overall nice finish. It's a 7 out of 10. I'll give it a 7. There are definitely problems, but there are definitely some good things too. I just wish those problems weren't there. I don't know what happened. It seems like a few things probably slipped by in the R&D stage that probably shouldn't have. So very good figure with kind of a lot of issues. It's weird. I don't know. The good stuff is definitely good, so that's why I'm having trouble. I'm trying to make sure I'm not just saying it's better than it is because I like Guile and Street Fighter, and I don't think I'm doing that because the good things are really good. Like the shoulders have tons of range. The overall aesthetic is very nice, but those issues are fairly severe. So I guess, well, you have the information now. You can decide for yourself what you want to do with it. And let me know in the comment section below what you think about all of this stuff. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't enjoy the video, well, that's okay too. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to do it. I have thousands of videos already on the channel and new ones coming out just about every single day. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.